Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman, and this is the Christenson Nautilus. Definitely a fishy outline, but unlike a lot of fish, or actually unlike most fish, this fish you're not trying to go with the absolute shortest length that you can possibly surf. This is designed to be ridden in longer lengths. You look at most swallowtail fish, they're typically proportionally wider than this board. They've got way more nose area than this board, and they're meant to be surfed really short, like 5'4", 5'6", maybe 5'8", and they're meant to be ridden in small waves or flat waves. This board is actually designed for better. It's designed for average and above surf. You can grovel on it, but it's really meant more for those average and above days. It's actually a great complement if you ride a fish as like your super small wave board and you're looking for something bigger. This is going to be the easiest board to transition to for better waves. But in the design, like this whole board, whether it be the nose being narrower than a standard fish, proportionally it's narrower than a standard fish, and then also the tail of this board is narrower than a fish. All of it is meant to be surfed at longer lengths. So generally, when you're looking at the Nautilus, you're going to see this board in lengths between 6'6" and 7'6", and 6'6" being a really good surfer would surf a 6'6", and the bigger ones, it doesn't feel like a big board. A lot of the other boards, if you get a board that big, like let's say it was like a concave bottomed hybrid board that you got in 7.0, it would feel like an absolute giant whale of a board, where this board in 6'10" or 7.0 or 7.2 still feels really, really good and loose and real drivey and real free on the water, where those bigger concave boards, they'll feel really big, really sticky, and you won't be able to put the rail in the water. So again, when you think about this board, think about it in 6'6" to 7'6", not necessarily the super small lengths. When you're looking at this board and you're getting up close with it, what you're going to notice, if we just go nose to tail, the nose has a nice beak in the nose. If you come a little bit further back into what is either going to help you make the drop or not, like this board has a narrower nose up here. It's almost like a cross between like a hybrid and a shortboard nose compared to a fish nose, but it's narrower up here, and what that helps you to do is get into the wave early without any extra width on the nose hooking up and tripping you on the takeoff. The stringer in this board, it's a soft cedar stringer, like that dark wood cedar stringer, which is going to help the board have a little bit more flex and liveliness to it. But just like the Sea Bucket and the Flat Tracker from Christenson, it has a wider width on that stringer back to about here, and then really tapers to a much thinner width on the stringer for the back third of the board. And so what that does is it gives you a little bit more stiffness up front in the board and a little bit more strength where you could potentially break the board. But when you get to the tail, the combo of having the narrower stringer on this board right back in here, like basically from here back, and then also having the swallowtail, and then having the tail really thin out in the back of the board, allows you to really load up the turns on this board compared to, a board that was this length, but also compared to any normal fish. So it's like these subtle differences in the board. The nose width, the narrower in the midsection of the board, and then having that flex in the tail allows you to surf this board really aggressively, and then also not in waves that you would typically surf a fish in. Again, just because the size of wave that you could surf it in, and that's what actually makes it a really good step-up board for somebody that's riding like a twin fin fish a lot of the times, or a twin plus trailer, or a thruster, or a quad fish for that matter. So looking at this board, this is the board that I surfed over the last month, and this is a 6'10", and I also got a chance to surf a 7.0 as well. And again, like most of the short boards I'm surfing are like 6'3", and most of the hybrids I'm surfing are 5'10". But even on a board that's like over a foot longer, it doesn't have that sticky, like gigantic feel that something else would in that length. Because I think a lot of times people look at like a 6'10" or a 7.0 or a 7.2 and they're like, whoa, that's like way too big for me. What this board translates to in this size is just super easy paddling and easy to get into the wave. But it has a lot of that Christenson like glide built into it, and then also maneuverability and control. The board is thick in the center, and pretty flat deck, and then it really tapers off on the rail, so you got good rail hold in the wall of the wave. And one thing that we noticed is that the whole size run is the same thickness. So like it's 2 3/4 at 6.8, and it's 2 3/4 at 7.4. And that's unique in that typically, like when you get up to like 7.4s and 7.6s, you start seeing like 3 inches thick or 3 1/4 inches thick, and they just get to be super, super thick. And that's what keeps you from surfing that board well and enjoying it. By having the board always be 2 3/4, no matter what length, it's just a question of which board that you want to surf based on the fun level. So if you wanted the board to be super easy to surf but still be lively, you could go all the way up to a 7.4 regardless of your weight. So kind of like anybody could ride a 9.0 longboard, like anybody could ride the 7.4 Nautilus and have a good time. The concave and the bulkiness of the rail wouldn't be holding you back because they're all the same thickness. Looking at the construction of this board, we talked a little bit about the stringer. And a lot of people are like, well, hey, why doesn't that board have like a gloss and polish on it and a tint? Well, the tint and the gloss and polish, it does look incredible, but it can also add a few $100s to the price of the board. So when you're looking for a board as good as a Christenson, but you want to save a little bit of money on it, or if you're just not into the colors, one way to do that is to just go with a clear sanded finish, and that's what this board is. But even on the clear sanded finish, you still get a lot of things that bring the board, aesthetically and then also performance-wise to a higher level than a standard board. One of them would be that stringer that we talked about, that darker cedar stringer with the taper in the back. Another one being that the deck of the board, the whole deck of the board is Volon glass, and then also the deck patch, which you can see right here, how it's tapered in right here to the back. That's another layer of Volon glass. And what that does is it makes the board stronger against breaking, and then also makes it more impact resistant. Because a board like this, it's a do-everything board. You're going to be surfing it a lot, and you want to have the deck hold up well over time. And so having that full Volon layup on the deck, like that single layer the whole length, and then that deck patch feathered in, makes the board, a board that's awesome in the beginning is also going to be a really nice board as well at the end of the year. If you go back to the tail, this board is available as a thruster and then also as a quad. And online, you've probably seen this board set up with glassed-on marine ply wood fins that are glassed onto the board. And we've actually had them in the shop and sold them in the shop as well. And aesthetically, it's like one of the most gorgeous things that you'll ever see. But as far as like reality-wise, it's a little bit of a pain to store the board, to travel with the board is a real pain. And then you obviously can't you can't switch your fins around if they're glassed on. But if you're looking for a pure fish and you want that look, and then you want that smooth feel of the glass on fins, which they do give you a nice smooth feel through the water, those are available on custom orders. The reason that we went with the stock boards, we went with Futures boxes on the boards is just for convenience. It allows you to take the fins out when you're traveling, or whether it be a day trip or on the plane or in a boat. If you take the fins out, it's just going to be that much safer against damage. And it also, like, if you're putting multiple boards in a board bag, like, you could stack them obviously and not have the fins on this go through the board that's underneath it. But also from a design standpoint, the difference between the tri and the quad, this board has so much speed built into it, from one being generous with the foam and the rocker and the weight of the board getting into the wave early. It already has so much speed getting into the wave and so much rail line to create more speed. The quad will help you go faster, but it's almost like it doesn't need the extra speed from the quad. So we did all of our stock boards as thrusters, because the thruster gives you that pivot that really complements the board shape a lot better. So that where the board itself will create all the down the line drive that you would ever need and speed that you would ever need, the thruster gives you a pivot that adds to the board's performance. Where if you put a quad on it, it's just going to give you more speed down the line and it won't give you that pivot, where the thruster gives you that pivot to be able to bleed that speed when you wanted to bring it back into the pocket. So that's a little bit of tech on the fins, like on those glass-on fins, which we do custom, and then also on the benefits of the boxes, and then the thruster and the quad. Just had an absolute blast surfing this thing. you know, it fits into a lot of different spaces. If you have a longboard, if you surf primarily longboards and you're looking for a step down board that's going to be more maneuverable, like in better surf or just as an alternative to a longboard, this is a great board to get because you can get it in a longer length, but it won't feel bulky. It's a great step up from a fish, and then it's also a good, you know, there's this huge growing class of boards called a Novelty Boards. So, you know, when you're just tired of your shortboard and whether you're tired of it mentally or you're physically like blown out, like 6 hours into the day and you're looking for something easier to surf that you just want to cruise on, this is a great board for that. Had a really fun session down at the lighthouse. Actually, one of the first sessions I surfed it was surfing like a 5'11" fish like for 4 hours straight, and then came in, got a drink of water and some food, and then went back out on this for another 2 hours, and it was literally like I had just gotten out of bed. It was like a brand new set of muscles compared to a smaller board. So it's fun in that aspect as well. So the bottom shape on this thing, again, on their website, Christenson lists complex bottom contours. Everything in this bottom is just super subtle. The front of the board is flat, maybe just a little bit of V in the nose to a little bit of belly, and then it goes into a little bit right here in the tail of the board, just a very, very, very slight double concave to then V out the tail. But again, everything is really subtle. Hard rails from about here back, and then forward, just super soft rails, even like a little bit of roll up on the rail. Again, just to make everything easier to roll in and out of turns. The Christenson Nautilus, again, don't try and size it super small, 6'6" to 7'6", just a blast of a board to surf. I mean, again, we surfed it anywhere from, I would say the smallest waves were sections of the wave being about like that big, and then the better days it was overhead, and it really worked well in everything, just a blast to surf. The Christenson Nautilus. If you have any questions about this board, you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or you can check it out online on our website, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in. So on this board, you can see it has a fishtail, but it's quite a bit narrower than the fishtail that would be on your like standard twin fin fish. That tail would be somewhere out here as far as the width. And so this one's a lot more brought in. So overall, it has a fishy outline, but everything is brought in to be narrower. The middle of the board, the nose, and then also the tail of the board. And this is really brought in right here, and so it's narrower, and it's also really thin in the back of the board. So back here, and then combining it with that thinner stringer that's in here, all of this gives the board a lot more control, and then also the ability to flex the tail in and out of the turns. On the bottom of the board, you can see again, like looking at the stringer, it's a little bit wider up here, and then it goes down to being a lot narrower out the back of the board. Kind of unique to this board, looking at it, if we go from the nose all the way back, first we're going to see the beak in the nose, so you can see like right here how the foam comes up and then goes flat right here, and that just puts a little bit more volume forward in the board without making the entire board thicker. As you're coming back, you can look at this stringer, and this is a cedar stringer. You can see that darker wood, and that darker cedar stringer is it's a softer wood, which allows the board to be a little bit more flexible, more lively, and it's got that wider width from the nose all the way back to about here, and then it really tapers down to a much thinner width the remainder of the board. So the back third is really thin, and the front 2/3 is wider. And so what that does is it keeps the front of the board relatively stiffer than the back, and then also it reinforces the area of the board that you may buckle or break it and help prevent that. And then the tail of the board, with having the stringer be really narrow, really thin, and then also going into a swallowtail that's also thin itself, it gives the tail of the board a lot more flex. So it allows you to really load that tail up, especially by having the wider stringer going to the narrower stringer, allows you to really load that tail up and flex it coming in and out of the turns. And it's noticeable, especially when you're in good surf and you're going really fast, you can really load this thing up on the tail.